Hi everybody, my name is Dr. Mike Lane here at Bend Wellness Center in Bend, Oregon, and in today's video I'm going to share with you a really simple and effective stretch to open up the muscles of the front side of the hip, mainly the TFL, the sartorius, the upper fibers of the rectus femoris, which is one of your quads, the glute minimus, and medius. So to get into this position, we're going to have the front knee at 90 degrees. And we want the foot to be straight forward, so there's no twisting of the foot this way. And then the back leg, the back knee is directly underneath the hip. The foot is flexed, so the toes are being extended, and the Achilles tendon is straight up and down. If it's rotated, it's going to torque your tibia and put weird pressure on your knee. And to start off, we want the heel to be straight back out of the center of your hamstring. So we will eventually get to this position where the foot is out. But to start off, I want your heel to be straight back. Not here, it's going to be a different thing, but straight back. So this back leg is like the rudder of a ship that's going to be guiding you directly forward. So I'll show the side profile so you can see what I'm going to be doing with my upper body. Now if you have a yoga block or a pad or a pillow and your knee is sore just from being on a hard floor, you can always put that underneath. But I also recommend putting a block underneath your knee because what it's going to do is it's going to neutralize your pelvis because the height between your knee and your heel is different than that of the femur height. So my hands here are nice and neutral. Here you can see that the left is a little lower. So it just really depends on your body. If you want to have a little bit more neutral, you can go here. I'm just going to put this to the side for now. So we're starting in this 90-90 position. And I want you to play with your head position here. So typically our head is forward here, so it loads our chest. But we're softly going to tuck our chin and pull our head back over our shoulders, which is going to make us more erect. Now with your hands, you can place your hands on your thighs. Eventually we'll get the hands out to the side. So imagine that you're trying to get on a roller coaster ride that you're just a little bit too short for. So you start to lengthen up, and as you start to pull your head back slightly, we're not extending, you might start to feel a little bit of load in through here. The word often that's used to describe this is stretching, but we're loading it. We're turning it into a postural muscle versus here, this is more of a stretch. Here we're loading it because we're changing how this muscle is holding our upper body in relationship so we don't fall backwards. So I draw the chin in slightly, lift the head up away from the shoulders, and I pull my whole upper body back to the wall behind me. It's like I'm pulling my rib cage back. So that the plumb line from my ear and shoulder and hip starts to move backwards in relationship to that of that knee on the back. As I start to reach back and I start using some of the foundation principles that I had in the other videos of breathing up into the chest, expanding the rib cage upward as I draw the abdomen in, because when I draw the abdomen in, it helps to hold the pelvis in place. As I start to lean back and start to feel this area of the quad outer hip, I want to hang out here. Breathing deeply into the chest. We want to inflate the rib cage like that of a hot air balloon. Remember, the back heel is straight up and down. We don't want it to rotate out. We want the Achilles tendon to be straight up and down. We're going to hold this here for 5 breaths. Breathing up, staying up as you exhale. The 3 E's of the decompression breath from foundation training are expand, elevate, and engage the abdominals. You might start feeling a lot of heat because the muscles are engaged. It's called an eccentric load. They're engaged as they're lengthening, so it builds a lot of core heat. And that also helps to lengthen muscles. One more breath in. And on the exhale to come out of this, bring your head forward so it's much easier to change positions. So now we're going to switch to the other side. This side I'm going to put the block underneath so you can see its relationship. So front knee is at 90 degrees. We don't want to start here. We don't want to start here. We want to stand in a nice balanced position because this is also a very good position to put yourself in when you're working on balance. Back heel. Straight up and down the Achilles tendon. The toes are extended to help lengthen the fascia on the back of the toes and the bottom of the foot. So I find this position here. I feel upward. I already just naturally pull myself upward. and I tuck my chin slightly and I start to lift up through the back of the head. And when you're not double chinning it, you're lengthening up to the top part of the head, like a turtle head coming out of its shell, or a roller coaster ride that you're just a little bit too short for. So I'm starting with my heel underneath the knee here. You can place your hands here if you want something to do with them, but I'm actually going to place them in this open chest position called long wing. As I breathe in, feel the rib cage expand upward, and it elevates. So as I breathe in like a hot air balloon, in through the nose, it expands, it elevates, and as I exhale, I engage the abdominals and keep them engaged. That's going to help hold the pelvis in place. Now I start to pull my mid-back towards the wall behind me. If I extend, I'm going to compress my mid-back, or my lower back. If you feel tension in the lower back, it's because you've extended like this. Versus pulling back, you're going to start to feel the front side of that right hip. So my hands are in this long wing position. I'm holding like 2 basketballs. I'm going to hold this here for 5 breaths. Staying big as you exhale. Let the breath go to the back side of the body. And at any point in time, if it becomes too much of a load, you can always come forward a little bit further. You're not firing the glute at all either. You're mainly feeling the action right here on the front side and even on the outside where the pocket is of your pants. And as you engage the abdominals, it's going to force more air upward on your next inhale. One more breath. Good to come out of it where you bring the head forward. And now we're going to go to step 2 of this. So that back leg is the rudder. I always start with the heel straight back from the center of the hamstring. But now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull it out just a little bit. Now for some people, your hips are so tight that when you do this, your foot wants to rotate to accommodate the fact that your hip can't slightly internally rotate. So if you only have to move your foot a centimeter or 2, that's great, because what you did is you just took like a washcloth and you started to load it this way, and that's what you're doing here is as the heel starts coming outward a little bit, it's internally rotating this hip. So we're going to do the exact same thing with the leg just slightly outward. I'm going to go into the long wing position. Heel is straight up and down, so it feels like there's more load probably in the 2nd or 3rd toes. Softly tucking the chin, lengthening up towards the ceiling. As you breathe in, feel yourself kind of fall backwards. The whole body is pulling backwards, not just the upper shoulders going over the pelvis. You can even I'll do a side profile, you can even pull your hips back a little bit so the knee extends slightly more. And that's another way of getting in there. So we're going to hold this for 5 breaths with this slight bit of internal rotation of the back leg. Eyes are looking straight forward. Now you might feel this in a little different spot. It might be a little bit lower, it might be a little bit more inward. Just depends on where you are tight. Keeping the chest nice and broad. Making sure to pull the shoulders wide, not back. We're not squeezing the shoulder blades together because that stops the ribs from opening. Now, if you want to add a little bit more flavor, a little bit more spiciness to the front side of this hip, the front toes, all you have to do is just grip the floor very softly, like a cat happy pawing. It's very subtle. That loads this more because then you start engaging a little bit of this line. You don't have to do that either. You can just play with this. Now when you're done with the 5th, come forward. I'm getting quite toasty in here. This eccentric load really gets everything warmed up. So remember the back leg, step 2, take it out just a little bit, making sure that back heel, Achilles tendon is straight up and down. And you don't want the front foot to be like on your tightrope like this. You want it to be hip distance apart. Good, go into this long wing position, softly tucking the chin. Feel you start to muscularly kind of elevate up. It's not just your shoulders, it's your entire body lifting up. And then the breath from the inside is what helps pull you up even higher. So drawing back, backside of the neck gets long so you can feel a little bit of stretch at the base of the skull, and lean back a little bit. You can even pull the hips back just a little bit, so then that loads that pelvis with that slight bit of internal rotation of that back leg. There's not much moving happening here at all. Mainly it's in the rib cage, but this hip flexor right here is being loaded tremendously. It's in a safer position because now it's eccentrically loading. It's more of a postural muscle. And as you engage the abdominals, you're going to be linking this connective tissue chain, the front side of the hip all the way up to abdominals. Stay expanded, keeping the active engagement of the belly. If you want to get a little bit more firing into the belly, you can even take your fingertips and try to push them in and you resist it. Or you can say yes, and that long S helps hold the transverse abdominis and all the rectus and the obliques. One more breath. Good, and come out of that. We're going to do one more. Each time you go into this, you take that back leg and you internally rotate it a little bit further. And like I said, if it's only a millimeter or a centimeter, that is great. But this is one of the best hip flexor stretches or loading tensional stretches that I know of. If you have any pain on the outer knee just outside of the patella, that's typically from a tight IT band, which is linked to that TFL, which is that muscle like right underneath your pocket. So for this last set, bring it out a little bit further, but make sure that Achilles tendon stays straight up and down. So you can put your hands in any position, really. I'm just showing either hands on the leg here, because you don't know what to do with your arms. You could do long wing, you could even do short wing here. You can even go long, wide like this to help open up the chest. Tucking the chin slightly, lengthening up like you're trying to get on that roller coaster ride. Breathing in through the nose, out through the nose. Remember, pulling back, leaning back. Remember, if you have any low back tension or compression, it's probably because you extended, but you might not be engaging your abdominals too much, so you might have to come forward a little bit more. Actively engage the belly more by practicing by pushing in or saying yes, and then you can build up to go back further. We're going to hold this for 5. You can switch your hand position if you wish. With every breath, feel where it's going. And with foundation training, the decompression breath, it's all about expansion, elevation, decompression. So how do you get your rib cage big? How do you take up more space? As you breathe in, you expand, you elevate. You stay expanded and elevated by slowly exhaling through the nose so you maintain that muscular height of your rib cage. And you can always add a little bit more flavor of that loaded on the left hip by taking the right toes and just softly gripping into the floor. Just very little bit. You don't want to do it so your whole foot, your arches come off the ground, but just enough that you feel a little bit more tension. Good, and come forward. And now another thing that could be causing a little bit of the low back tension could be the uneven pelvic height. So if you do have a yoga block, play with that to see if that will help mitigate some of the compression that you might have. So for this last one, take the foot out a little bit further than you did the last time. If you want to do this in front of a mirror, that's great, because then you could watch your biomechanics of your breathing. If it's going up, you can even turn sideways to see if you're extending rather than pulling back. Go into a long wing position. Broaden through the chest, broaden through the back. Holding 2 basketballs with your hands. Breathing up. Get big first before you lean back. So I'm just going to do a front profile here so you can see it. That back foot straight up and down. The Achilles is straight up and down. Each time you rotate that leg out a little bit further, you're going to feel it in a different spot. I recommend doing this 3 times. We did it straight, then a little bit out, then a little bit further out. You can take those front toes and just grip them just a little bit, like little gecko toes. Staying big as you exhale, drawing the abdomen in. Do a minimum of 5 breaths. If you want to do 10 breaths, you can do that as well. Getting nice and big, staying nice and big as always. Good, and come out of that. Now, a great exercise to balance this out with is the woodpecker. I have other videos that show how to do a woodpecker because we opened up the front side, and it'll be good for you to get into a position where you can load the hip going into a single leg hip hinge to then turn on the posterior chain on this side to help stabilize the openness that you had in there. Enjoy.